more stuff on the idea of the sublime. In this video I want to see if I can get a bit of Kant in there if I can. But more specifically I want to try and bring out the sense that the feeling of the sublime, I need to put a qualifier against this term feeling at some point as well, but I want to talk about the feeling of the sublime, about how that feeling isn't a passive sense, or isn't just a passive sense, but it's also a product of our embodied response to the circumstances of the sublime. Let's see if I'll get all that in one video. I'll give it a go. Alright, Kant. It's a long time since I've read Kant, so I'm working from memory here, never mind. If I get it wrong, somebody can correct me. Yeah, okay, Kant has, he's probably got more than two. I can just recall two ideas of the sublime that Kant talks about. What he calls the mathematical sublime and the dynamic sublime, something like that. The mathematical sublime is the component of the sublime which we get, which is associated with immensity. If I can kind of retranslate Kant into my own language, we have an inbuilt and evolutionarily determined propensity to work at a certain scale. We are human scale things. We work between the size of an ant and a small mountain. You know, that's the kind of range we work in. The scale of things and the measure of things that we move through is always a scale that's bounded. You know, I'm here in this country park. You know, so there's a clear boundary to my experience right now. They're bounded by the trees. My world is constantly being bounded by walls, the walls of caves and rooms and tents and all that kind of stuff. It's very clearly bounded, limited, measurable, and also it's kind of shaped. It has a shape, my world. You know, I mean, even when I'm in the middle of a field, my world has a kind of boundary. You know, it's bounded by the disk of the horizon that I seem to form the central pivot point of. You know, there's a boundary to that, and even that has a shape. It feels round. You know, kind of. So most of my experiences, now I guess throughout human history and animal history, the experience, the appropriate experience would be to experience the world as bounded and shaped in that way, having a boundary, having a shape. And the measure of that is the measure of man, you know, man being the measure of his own experience. You know, it's all cubits and spans and arm's lengths and fathoms and those kinds of... Actually, I heard about in an old copy of Believe It or Not book I used to have. It had a definition of the word fathom, and I don't think this is right, as the length of a swain's arms around the object of his affection. A swain is a sailor, and the length of a swain's arms is measured tip to tip when you do that, and it's usually about the same as your height, about 6 foot. So a fathom is 6 foot. Anyway, that's irrelevant, other than to say that measures like that tend to take their logic from the human body, but also from the human imagination. You know, our imagination is human body shaped, and is shaped and measured in a scale which is appropriate for that body, its habitations, its perceptual needs, those kind of things. So that's the first thing. Oh yeah, where are we going with that? Oh yeah, the mathematical sublime. So that's our experience. But occasionally we are confronted by things which are beyond measure. So, you know, the things I've mentioned before in these videos about the prompts and the stimuli for the sublime feeling. You know, the Grand Canyon, the cosmos at night, the ocean in its fury. Well, not so much that, but certainly the ocean. Or a desert, you know what I mean? That film, The Sheltering Sky, has some great desert scenes. And when that happens, our embodied mathematical measures, based on the embodied sense and the embodied mind of human existence, is kind of boggled, really. It's boggled. The imagination fails at that point. It's just outside of our measurement, and it's also outside of our understanding of shape. You know, when you think what shape is the universe, it's like, oh, what shape is the universe? So we keep imagining this circular thing, and then we say, oh, what's outside that circular thing? And it starts to become formless and shapeless, and at that point we start to get mind boggled, and our eyes start to widen, and our mouth starts to gape, and we're in that kind of weird moment of being boggled and being in the presence of the sublime. You know, it's that kind of feeling. So so that's the mathematical sublime. The other one that Kant talks about is the dynamic sublime. I think it's the dynamic. I might be getting that wrong actually. The dynamic sublime, which is one I've talked about before, which is to do with power. And again, if I can retranslate into my own language, you know, we are a species, and you know, and all life forms have got this, but we as a species are very closely attuned to power and status and hierarchy and predator-prey relationships and yeah, all that kind of stuff really. As I say, all animals do it. All animals are acutely aware that they're about to be eaten by something larger, and they better keep an eye out for something smaller to eat before they starve. So they're all in that kind of relationship of power, and have feelings attuned to those relationships. And we don't escape that. In fact, we've got it in spades. You know, we do it all the time. We're constantly playing little status games with one another, working the nuances of power relationships, the dynamics of a power relationship, and that's kind of fine, but it brings with it the possibility of measureless power, infinite power. The scale can go right up, you know, and so when we feel as if we're in the presence of something, you know, like the storm at sea, like the universe that can swallow us whole without choking at all, or just a very big fish or something, whatever it is, you know, big things. We get this sense that again, our ability to comprehend and place this relationship, the relationship to ourselves and that thing, into any kind of a hierarchy, into any kind of dynamic power relationship, is baffled and boggled and bewildered, and we are almost extinguished by it. But whilst also being attracted to it, because we're also attracted to power, aren't we? You know, power brings charisma, and so infinite power brings infinite charisma. So it's that kind of a thing. Yeah, so there's those two components in Kant, and there may be others, as I say, the mathematical and dynamic. But the other point I was trying to make, which I think is in Kant as well, is what we do in relation to that. Because we don't just stand, well, we do kind of, but our feelings aren't passive. We're not just the passive recipients of those feelings. We generate those feelings, partly as responses to those experiences, to the experience of being in a measureless void, or the experience of being in I don't know, just that one of those kind of weird power relationships where everything is just out off the scale. And he says that for the first one, the mathematical sublime, we respond to measurelessness by the concept of the infinite. We generate the concept of the infinite. And this isn't the kind of mathematical infinites that real mathematicians like Kant and all those guys generated. This is the concept of the infinite. You know, just that's our response to it. And our response to the other one, this power in Kant, is something to do with moral values. We generate, he says, moral values in response to, at least partially in response to, that measureless relationship of power, as a means of just kind of reimagining it, really, of claiming it, so we're not swallowed by it and not rendered completely. We're not extinguished by it. I'm not quite sure how to move forward on that one. I'll leave it there. Okay, so the sublime in Kant, mathematical sublime, dynamic sublime, measureless, formless, infinite morality. Hallelujah.